All right, I'm with Brian Miller. Brian is CEO of ASTR on the TS6 venture, and we're talking about silver and gold in epithermal veins in Santa Cruz, Argentina. Brian, how are you today?
Doing well. Recovering after a week of pitching. The voice is still on the mend.
Yeah, intense week in Vancouver. 3 conferences back to back to back. And there's a lot of energy in the sector here in January 2020. Obviously, we're seeing that expressed in the gold and silver charts this week. What an intense week.
Yeah, pretty wild. So 15 years on this side of things, and I'm going, so this is what a bull market's like.
Yeah. Yeah, all the emotions. Yeah, it's intense. So let's talk about your company. Why don't you tell us about your background?
Yeah, so I grew up actually in North Idaho and on a very small family farm. I typically try to mention that because it is relevant. It's shaped how I approach business, but just life in general. You tend to become a problem solver at a very early age. Your job title is whatever it takes. And so that's just kind of shapes the approach to things. But I got started in mining in 2005. My background education is in finance and business. I started out on the operations side of things, moved into the corporate development side about 15 years ago. And the last company I was with, we sold in 2017. And I knew that I wanted to lead a company at that point. And I got that opportunity with Astra in 2020.
Okay, so you've been the CEO of Astra since 2020.
Yeah, since we started it from the ground floor.
Okay, so you're co-founder, CEO, and can you tell us about some of the other large shareholders of the company?
Yeah, shareholders, management, and directors. Of course, we've been buying this thing since the beginning. We've participated in every financing we've offered. Some of the major shareholders outside of the management consist of our largest shareholder, Michael Gentile. He's our largest shareholder, about 16%, and a repeat investor since we went public. And then a lot of the group that was backing Northern Superior, so Simon Marcotte, Peter Demooney, Victor Cantori, Fahad El Tamimi, the group Mason Resources. So very much that consortium there. And then even Michael Gray and Scott Speed of Agentis, some of the principals there personally have been shareholders and supporters of us since very early on as a private company.
Okay. So tell us about the project in Argentina and what attracted you to acquiring this flagship asset.
Yeah, the thesis for the company we started out was epithermal gold silver in South America. We'd purchased 2 projects in Chile when we started. We've really liked Argentina from the beginning, but politically it was more challenged when we started this thing in 2020. So we did some drilling in Chile. We got some decent results, but no value in the market. And we had a pristine share structure. Our capital structure was incredible. And I'd convinced the team that if we could maintain that and bring in another quality asset when the markets were in the dumps in 2022 through 2024, that we'd emerge on the other side in an enviable position. So I gave my head of exploration, Diego Guido, the mandate. I said, find me something with high grade, multi-million ounce potential anchored by an existing resource. And he laughs in my face. He says, you want me to find a unicorn? I told him, I said, yeah, if not in Chile, tell me where we need to look. He said, Argentina, Santa Cruz. I said, yeah, we'll look there. Millet looked like he was gaining traction at that point. And of course, that's Diego's stomping grounds. He's a globally renowned expert for the Deseado Massif. And without missing a beat, he says, I know the project we need. It's called La Manchuria. He was on it 20 years ago as a junior geo. He said, this has got some of the best grades in the Deseado Massif. He said, there's a good exploration story here. His approach would have been different than past approaches to exploration. It was drilled out as a bulk tonnage. resource, and the high-grade feeder zones had never been discovered. So in his mind, this was the most exceptional project he'd been on. And all of the grades, it's, you know, we're literally talking about anywhere between 20 grams of gold, upwards of 200 grams of gold, with multiple kilos of silver in multiple drill intercepts near surface, like 100 meters, 150 meters deep. So it took 13 months to work on this thing to get this deal done. We got it done in the middle of 2024. We took it to Michael Gentili and Simon Marcotte at that point, and my entire team worked for free for that whole year. We knew that if we could keep the share structure intact and get this project in, that it would be exceptional. So it wasn't deferred pay. We all own enough stock. We've got enough money invested. So we worked for free. We got that done, and Diego knocked it out of the park with the first drill program last year.
All right, so La Manchuria in southern Argentina, Santa Cruz province. Yeah, so at first blush, the project looks exceptional, but let's dive into a little bit. So who had this project, you know, that sold it to you?
It's a company called Patagonia Gold. They are a public company, and they've got, I think, probably the biggest land owning in the Deseado Massif. They've got an exceptional portfolio, and they had done some exploration. I think the last drilling that was done here was in 2013, and they were focused on bulk tonnage near surface deposits. And Diego's approach was to go after the high-grade feeder zones at depth. And when I say at depth, that's a very relative term. The deepest holes that were on this thing were less than 200 meters deep, so it's still very shallow. So we did an option agreement. We've got some really good deal terms. Our partners have exposure to the upside. We can get up to 90% in the project over a 6-year period. Most of that, 80%, we earn by spending $3 million in exploration, which we'll have earned very shortly. And then we can purchase an additional 10% with a $5 million cash payment by the 6th anniversary. And we're less than a year and a half into this.
Very good. So you're in the midst, or you're in the middle of a drill program right now. The first half is completed. So tell us about what you've seen so far and what you've accomplished in this program at La Manchuria.
The big takeaway here is that we've opened the system up well beyond all of the past interpreted constraints. It was previously thought that this thing was faulted off on both ends. When we started this, there was only about 350 meters of vein strike, and there's some significant faults on both ends of the veins. And so that was one of the biggest hurdles. And it was also thought to be constrained at depth by a unit of rocks that hosted the veins but didn't carry grade. And what we're seeing now is definitively we have extended the strike of the veins from an original 350 meters out to 800 meters. And that's at least 100 meters of strike added beyond the faults on each end. And from there, it's wide open. So we're really excited about that. And then additionally, we've actually drilled through these constraining rocks at depth, which were thought to be a basement unit that just basically went to the depths of the earth. And in some cases, we drilled through those. They're only thin layers, and they've been as thin as 10 meters thick. So this thing's opened up at depth. It's opened up along strike, and now Diego's adding parallel veins with the drilling that we're doing right now. So this thing's really starting to grow in every dimension.
Okay. So how far have you tested it along strike?
Right now, about 800 meters strike length.
Okay. And how deep?
I think the deepest hole along strike, it's so shallower to the northwest. We're talking, I think, about 100 meters beneath surface, maybe 150. And then to the southeast, the whole thing plunges to the southeast. So the holes to the southeast are a bit deeper. I think the deepest holes there are about 220, 230 meters vertical depth.
Okay. So in the drill program that you completed so far, how many holes have you drilled?
5,100 meters total that we've completed, and that consists of 25 drill holes, and those are all pending assay results right now.
Okay. And are the assays taking a bit longer than expected? Because I noticed there's no news for for 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, the last news was December 1st to update the market that we completed the half of the drill program. The takeaways there were that we were encouraged by what we were seeing. We've extended the mineralization. We hit veins or veinlets in every hole. And we did have some holes where we had observable mineralization. So we know we're going to have some good results. We just don't know how good and how many. But yeah, the labs are taking some time. I mean, they're doing great. They're keeping in communication with us, letting know where things are. And the recent updates we have from them, we should have something imminently.
Okay. So probably we'll get an update in the next couple of weeks.
I would certainly think so.
Okay, very good. So a little bit of a technical question. The presentation says hole LMD 107A did intersect the vein in the rhyolitic tuff, and it was high grade. Can you tell us about LMD 110? It intersected the vein, but it was an andesite, so it has no grade. Is the rhyolite the key here to finding grade?
So far, yes. So to try to summarize this quickly without getting too far in the weeds, it's a very important point, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think that tends to be something that most people miss. They're focused on the high grade, the splashy results. What's important here, you got 107 that was a 75-meter step out from the fault that intersected the vein with grade. And then 75 meters beyond that, we got into 110, which had the vein in the andesites with no grade. And that system does pinch to the southeast, but it also looks like, as I mentioned, we drilled through the andesites in that area and they were only 10 meters thick. So we've got good host rock beneath there. That opens this thing up to depth and also along strike to the southeast. It's also worth mentioning too that our drilling that we've done on this program were the first drill results where we actually had grade in some of the andesites. So there are different units of andesites. Some carry grade and some do not. And we're still figuring that out as far as why, which ones, some of them do and some of them don't.
Okay, so some of the andesites do carry grade.
That's right. And which was actually a really interesting puzzle in the beginning, because typically in this part of the world, the andesites are a very good host rock. So Diego's got some working hypothesis right now as far as why that's occurring. And so far those are holding true and showing that that might actually be a working model that's sustainable going forward.
Very interesting. Okay. And what you're seeing to the southeast is the system is getting wider?
I don't necessarily know. What's that?
Or the veins are getting thicker to the southeast?
Well, what we've seen so far, it's a narrow vein system, so a thick vein in this area is 2 meters from what we've seen so far. The system's opening to the southeast. The deeper we go, we've seen these veins get thicker. So we've seen them coalesce from a series of veinlets into veins that are thick and high grade. But what's notable, and especially going to the southeast right now, you're seeing some convergence of those veins. The strike of those things converge, but the thicker veins also look to be potentially coalescing at depth, and that's really exciting. So this is all still very early. We're working through right now with the drill results that we have in hand. But this is pointing towards that thesis that Diego originally had as far as looking for these high-grade feeder zones at depth.
Okay, so we're focused on the high grade veins, the narrow high grade veins, but is there also potential for there to be a bulk tonnage aspect to this project?
Yeah, there's certainly that potential, and that's what was originally the target here. And there is a small resource. It was drilled out in 2013. It's 146,000 gold equivalent ounces. That was done at $1,300 gold and $18 silver. And all of the drilling we've done to date has been outside of that. So, I mean, obviously that's bigger, I think, but the reason that they were able to do that, the veins don't actually have a great deal of mineralization halo around them, but there are so many of these narrow veinlets near surface. I mean, they're incredibly dense. They're everywhere, and the fertility of the system is spectacular. You just have grade everywhere. So there were so many of these veinlets that they could actually drill out a bulk tonnage resource. So I do think that that is, certainly a possibility. But what we're still more interested in is these high grade feeder zones, these thicker veins. If you get into something thicker with high grade within that 300 to 400 meter depth, that would, I think, be the game changer, or the impetus to start really focusing on this thing starting as a high grade underground mine rather than a bulk tonnage open.
Okay. And then when you get back out there and restart the drill program, where do you think you're going to go?
Yeah, and I'll start with talking about what the strategy was for this. The first 5,000 meters was to really focus on the shallow near surface targets to really try to extend and increase that near surface footprint of the system. And by staying shallow, we maximized the number of drill holes that we had available for those meters. And then this follow-up 5,000 meters is going to be targeting some of these deeper targets, the 250 to 300 meter level targets, and then also stepping out for some of the more regional targets and some bigger step outs along strike.
Okay, very good. Is there anything else you think we should know about this project and what could be in store in the future?
I think right now the most important thing is that this system is obviously much bigger than what was previously interpreted. We've opened it up beyond every constraint. So the whole thesis of in the beginning of this having the potential to be a multi-million ounce target, I think is still holding well. And the most important thing we can do at this point is to continue to demonstrate potential for size and scalability with this.
I noticed you drilled 2 holes at what you're calling the road zone over to the east. Is that an area you plan to test further in the future?
I would say without a doubt, most likely. And it's glad you brought that up. That's an interesting thing because that's the first time that's been drilled. Obviously, a new parallel structure that's 350 meters away from previous drilling. And the observations from that drilling was that the vein textures were quite different than what we're typically looking at. They're more high level in the system. They're colder temperatures. And Diego believes he can see some disseminated sulfides in there. And his comment to me was that if those holes come back with any grade at all, he's going to be highly encouraged by that, because what that does is that gives an indication that you're high in the system and there's potential for a preserved ore shoot beneath that. And so we also, and that holds true to the pattern that we've seen. The veins furthest to the southwest are deeper in the system. They are higher temperatures, and then as you move through parallel veins going to the northeast, you get higher and higher in the system. And these first 2 holes in the road zone confirm that pattern as well. And we've got several other parallel trends out beyond that to the southeast that we plan to look at in the next drill program.
Tell us about the infrastructure and the lay of the land in this area of southern Argentina. Like if we go to visit the project, what does it look like?
To visit the project, you fly into a regional airport called El Calafate, and then it's about a 4-hour drive from there, mostly on highway, and then a provincially maintained gravel road from down towards Manantial Espejo up to the La Manchuria project. La Manchuria project is road access. It's got great infrastructure. There's not electricity to the property, but there is electricity just to the south. The infrastructure there's actually 2 mills that are on care and maintenance. One of them is Manantial Espejo, owned by Pan American Silver. Apparently no remaining resources there. That's a 2,000 ton per day facility. It's only been on care and maintenance for 2 years. It's still in very good condition. And then Martha, closer to La Manchuria yet, it's a small facility, been on care and maintenance, or been closed for better than 10 years, I think. And it's a much smaller facility, about 240 tons per day. So you've got good infrastructure there that needs ore. That was one of the things that I liked about the project very early on. So it's a fantastic place to build a mine. The elevation's about 700 meters. You can drill year round. It's relatively low relief, small rolling hills, but very, very good place for exploration and mining.
Very good. And then let's cross the border to Chile. You have two projects, Pampa Paciencia and Cerro. Tell us about these projects and how would you rank them? You know, like is the Argentinian project like far ahead, the flagship, or are these actually very close to each other in terms of their importance for the company?
We like both of the Chilean assets very much, and I think that there's a lot of value to be recognized there. We made the pivot to Argentina, obviously because of the grades near surface, Diego's familiarity with it. We believe that we could add value much faster with that project than we could with the other two. Pampa Paciencia is, we think the big story there still is the epithermal system. Very thick veins averaging 10 to 15 meters true thickness, in some places upwards of 30 to 50 meter veins. So it's a very big system. It's concealed by gravel. There's a lot of work to do there, but that's got some really good potential. It's also got a very nice copper target on it, and we're 15 kilometers from two major operating mines, Spence and Sierra Gorda. And the costs there were pretty low. We did RC drilling for an all-in cost of about $175 per meter. Now, the other one, Cerro, that's actually our favorite technical target in Chile. That's a high sulfidation epithermal gold system, potential porphyry. It's in the Maricunga, so high elevation, expensive to explore. That's typically where juniors go to die. But a very, very nice target up there. It's got a lot of similarities to Solaris Norte. And we're going to be doing a little bit of work there just to prove things up into a drill ready stage, maybe some sampling, some mapping, and perhaps some geophysics. But I think that one's a fantastic candidate for a JV.
Very good. So going back to La Manchuria, look, the main zone has generated some absolutely eye-popping results in the past. I mean, 20 meters of 10 grams gold and 800 plus grams per ton silver is really exceptional. You know, you don't need a whole lot of tonnage at those grades to have something that could potentially be economic. You know, like, what are you thinking just in terms of broad brush scale potential here? I know you can't say exact, you know, numbers because you don't have a resource yet, but you know, what's the size that's possible here?
I think the size potential is wide open as long as we continue to demonstrate this thing is open in every dimension. And there's several regional targets that we have too. That part of it, you know, it's just hard to say. It's hard to put a cap on it. You can look at the regional endowment. There are world-class assets there. You've got Cerro Negro, 150 kilometers to the north. Total known endowment there is over 10 million gold equivalent ounces. Cerro Vanguardia to the east, 100 kilometers. Total known endowment over 10 million ounces. You've got Cerro Morto further to the east, and that was about a 2 million ounce deposit. And you've got several others in the region that are, you know, anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million. So you really could be anywhere in there, but as long as we continue to show that this thing is open at depth, if these veins do continue to converge and get larger, that's going to be a huge development. That's a game changer because that's kind of a rarity in this part of the world. But I think, you know, realistically, you can say there's a high probability of 500,000 ounces at high grade, lower probability that there's 2 million ounces at more moderate grades, and then, you know, potential that, you know, you do have something that's an outlier, a top tier deposit in the jurisdiction.
Very good. Tell us about your management team, your VPX, and you know, some other key players on the team there.
Fantastic group of people for this type of exploration and development in this part of the world. Our head of exploration, Diego Guido, is based in Buenos Aires. He discovered the Pungueno deposit, actually not too far from where we're operating right now. He's a globally recognized epithermal expert. He's particularly sought out for his expertise in the Deseado Massif. And yeah, he was the one that put this in front of us as, you know, one of the best projects that he knows of in the region. One of our founding directors, Darcy Marood, led one of the teams that discovered El Peñón. Darcy discovered the Mercedes mine in Mexico. He actually built Cerro Negro mine in Argentina when he was with Yamana. And so he's, exceptional as far as exploration ability, and then his ability with exploration, but also having built mines and knowing that end of the process. Roberto Alarcon worked with Darcy at Yamana. He's based in Santiago. He's a lawyer. He was in-house counsel at Yamana and Homestake. So he's got that in-country experience in both Chile and Argentina. He's the guy who knows how to get stuff done in this part of the world. And Charles Funk is another one of our founding directors. Heliostar, Vizsla, obviously, making a name for himself in the industry as a mover and shaker, and especially a young one at that. Just really is. It's a great group for doing what we're doing in the places that we're doing it.
Very good. Yeah, I know Darcy, and his experience there in South America is quite exceptional.
Yeah,
he's a great person to have on the team. And Charles Funk, obviously, as well. His name carries a lot of weight these days with what he's done at Heliostar. So let's just wrap up with the share structure. Tell us about the share structure, the company cash and treasury, and perhaps give us a set of catalysts that you expect ahead in 2026.
Yeah. Glad you asked. The share structure, it's something I'm most proud of. It's been the hardest work we've put in this company since we started. And I think that that's something that a lot of companies get wrong, but I'm really, really proud of the work we've put in there. And it's not been easy, but tightly held, and 117 million shares out, very few warrants, and only 800,000 warrants that are deep in the money expiring in April. So very clean capital structure. The last 3 financings we've done have been without a warrant. And between management and that group of investors that I mentioned with Michael Gentili and the Northern Superior Resource Group, it's collectively about 75% ownership. So very tightly held by long-term solid shareholders. Cash position right now is about $4 million. Our all-in cost in this part of the world is about 500 Canadian per meter. So the next 5,000 meters of drilling is about $2.5 million. We'll burn through about 500,000 in G&A during that period, have about $1 million left over when we get completed with this upcoming 5,000 meters. The catalyst in the near-term future, like I said, 25 drill holes pending. Just for some context, we were able to put out some really, really good results. That first program that we did, that was 11 holes, 2,500 meters. So we've got at least twice that many holes coming out. We're really excited about what we saw in the field. And we've got another 5,000 meters of drilling beyond that starting in March. So we're well teed up for some good catalysts over the next 3 to 5 months, call it. The other thing I try to mention, I don't always remember to, but we are always looking for other projects. And my philosophy behind this is I believe as this cycle continues to develop, the most important source of cash for junior exploration companies is going to be from producers. They've got to rebuild pipelines that have been neglected for decades, and a portfolio of high quality assets are going to command a greater value. So if you can get good deals on them, if you can buy them right, like we did La Manchuria, that's where the margin is going to be. That's what's really going to drive value creation going forward.
Very good share structure. It's rare that I've seen such a tight trading float. About 30 million shares basically is the public float right now. That's pretty impressive. Very good, Brian. Thank you for the introduction. This is definitely one that I am putting on my radar and seriously thinking about buying here on the dip. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Robert.